Come on, man, come on. We all know why. Don't act like you don't know. Do you honestly don't know? No, but seriously, are you like trolling or something? Are you here because you wanna rage bait or because you want to get rage baited? There really aren't that many reasons why people are looking at Steam charts. And no, it's not a joke. The reason is obvious. But you know what? I think we can use the whole topic to have a bit of a wider discussion about Steam, the situation of the video game market and the industry. And I think to start this rant off, I would argue before we start, we need to talk about ignorance first. Being ignorant about this topic. And we need to talk about this attitude first, because it's the one thing that has kind of been fascinating me for a while now, that weird ignorance people display. Sometimes I think it's a coping mechanism or it's a defense against criticism. It's the whole idea of, I don't actually care. Shut up, dude. Let me have fun playing my video game. But these people think that their behavior, the exact thing that they're doing, like that state of mind, has no effect on the current state of the industry. That's why it's important to kind of talk about this first, because I've seen so many opinions and videos on this topic where the argument just kind of boils down to leave me alone. I don't give a shit. I just want to play my video game. I understand that mindset, but ignorance is not gonna change the fact that people are looking at Steam charts and trying to rage bait people on Reddit and Twitter, and it's also not changing the overall state of the industry. And in fact, I think that type of ignorance might be one of the big drivers, not the biggest one, but one of the bigger drivers in this whole discussion, and one of the reasons why we are at the point that we are in currently. In the sense that ignorance of certain facts and developments in the industry, purposefully ignoring and looking away, makes things much worse than making it better. You know, ignorance usually doesn't make things better. Just acting like you don't give a shit and, you know, you just want to have fun playing your game, that's probably not going to stop the publishers and investors from shutting down studios, and therefore also in a way cutting that enjoyment short, right? You're probably not going to have a good time if the game you would like to play and have fun with is being shut down, right? So that mindset probably doesn't lead us forward in a positive way. So maybe don't have that mindset about anything. I think ignorance is usually a very problematic approach to almost anything in life. Now, thankfully, we're talking about video games, so this is a little bit less problematic. So let's say you love a game. You just love playing a game. You don't want to hear anything about it. You ignore all of the buzz around this. You just have fun playing it. But on the other hand, the reality, and that is the investors or the publishers or even the developers, don't see the game, which is a product. Unfortunately, games are products. They don't see the product as profitable. They downsize the company or they fire some developers or even close the studio down. Then your enjoyment of that product is gone. It's over. It's been killed. It's done with. And I guess is it at this point where you start caring about it, or would an ignorant person just move on and get excited for the next product? I don't think so. I think people at that point would wake up and go, what? Wait a second. Well, I had fun playing this game. What happened? You know? And I think that is why you shouldn't be ignorant. You don't have to be in tune with all of the recent drama and information about the video games, but just a little bit. Just don't blindly step into a product purchase. Don't just blindly purchase something where it's possible, very possible, that within 2 or 3 months, that product is dead. I really hate that argument, especially when it's being used to defend the game or that kind of distract from the overall discussion. And that idea of let me have fun, fuck off, you know, I'm gonna ignore all of that. This is being used to kind of devalue the Steam chart discussion, which is a legitimate discussion. It's not just right-wingers rage baiting people on social media. It's not all about that. Or game criticisms as well. Like, game critiques are being dismissed as, I just want to have fun playing my video game. Yeah, but that is not positively affecting the industry. And also since we're talking about this, another argument as I'm usually hearing is bad critiques or negative game critiques or hating on a game, as well as looking at Steam charts, hurts Joe Schmo. Joe Schmo being a guy that works in accounting at a development company, or some pure wagey schmuck that sweeps the floor at a company, or some randomly underpaid developer, right? You're hurting these people when you are making that game not commercially viable by talking it down and making it look bad on a public space. But isn't that the same argument against ignorance that you're doing there? You're saying we can't just be ignorant of Joe Schmo from accounting, but we can't criticize products when they're bad because you want to be ignorant of the criticism, but you really care about Joe Schmo from accounting at Bungie or something, right? Let's be honest here, since we are talking about not caring. I'm honest, I don't really care because I can't. I don't really care about Joe Schmo and his job. Nobody's gonna shed a single tear if I lose my job. Nobody's gonna shed a single tear if you lose your job. It's unfortunately just a part of life and a part of the industry that you're working in. Me as a customer, I'm primarily interested in at least getting halfway worth the money that I paid for. I can't really care about Joe Schmo. Now obviously if somebody is losing his job or her job, that's always unfortunate. But what makes a video game developer more important, or somebody working for a games company more important than a guy working for a generic SaaS company, a guy working for Google or whatever? Like, yeah, sure, somebody might lose their job if a criticism of a game negatively affects sales, but that's not an argument to stop criticizing and to look away from industry trends. And also, whether a game is popular within a niche audience of fans is kind of irrelevant. Yes, Steam charts might not actually display how good a game is, how much quality a game contains. And a loyal core audience can sustain a game in certain circumstances. A game can last for a long time with 1,000 players if the development studio is appropriately sized, that they can live off of that respective income that a quote-unquote live service game, if it even is a live service game, can make. You know, I wouldn't label something like Deep Rock Galactic as a live service game, but I assure you the team of Deep Rock Galactic at Ghost Ship Games, they could probably sustain themselves on a lower player count that they actually have, because it's a much smaller studio. See, this is why I say it's all kind of very generic and easy to understand stuff. I'm not telling you anything that you have never heard here. But whether that game within a niche audience of fans is popular is kind of irrelevant. That's actually something most people shouldn't take into account when looking at a purchasing decision. Looking at like in-group preferences or like a cult mentality around a video game, which seems to be happening more and more, that's not something I'm making a purchasing decisions of. I don't really care how much a community that is already very closely attached to the company likes the newly released product. If anything, that's probably information that's misleading. You know, if you listen to someone who is essentially compromised, that person's probably not going to lead you to a intelligent purchasing decision. I kind of want to know if a product that is designed to last for a good 5 years, and this is very specifically talking about live service games, if that product is even worth the asking price to begin with, or if I'm going to play something completely different in 5 days because that game turns out has no content available. And I see this time and time again with other people around me that have less self-restraint when it comes to buying video games, and these people kind of need to buy and play every game on release immediately, no matter the cost. Recent example actually, the boys all bought Windrose on day one, and I told them, guys, you're probably not gonna like that game. It is an incredibly early access survival game that banks on the pirate aesthetic, and that's kind of it. But no, they all bought it. They all bought into the hype, hook, line and sinker. You know, Asmongold said it changed his life on the live stream, and they thought, oh my god, we need to buy this. And within 1 day, not a joke, within 1 day, everyone had put the game down and nobody else touches it anymore. Some of them even tried to refund the game, but I think they all had more than 5 hours of playtime, so yeah. And 50% of that playtime was fiddling with server settings and waiting for a dude to join the server. It's almost like exactly what I said would happen did indeed happen. And you know what? The unfortunate reality is these guys are probably going to purchase the next early access game just as mindlessly as they did with Windrose. There's kind of no learning process that happens. There's like no neurons that connect somewhere. And I don't really know why. If you had been burned by so many different games by putting your hands on a burning plate again and again and again by these trash tier products and you wasted money. I believe the last time this happened with us was in Borderlands 4, a game that none of us has touched since then. Like at some point we have to kind of stop buying the slop. And that's also why I'm so averse to buying early access friend slop game nowadays, because especially with friend slop there's at least a 50% chance that the friend group you play with loses interest in the game within less than a week. And then you sit there with your purchase and maybe about 6 hours of actual playtime, a playtime that doesn't consist waiting on someone to join the server and stuff like this. I feel like that's kind of wasting money. Buying Windrose and playing for less than 5 hours and then deciding we don't want to play it anymore wasn't a cool game. That's a giant waste of money. I feel like some people still need to kind of realize what early access truly means in some cases. I think so many normie gamers still haven't gotten a message. Early access kind of means the game isn't finished. So don't get disappointed and throw the game away once you find out that the main city hub isn't done yet or that half of the map isn't available. But it just kind of happens again and again and again. Don't purchase early access games if you don't understand what that means, what that entails. Windrose is developed by the same guys that made Palworld, and look at Palworld. How long did that actually take to be in an interesting playable state? It's, I think, releasing this year, later on in 2026. That was in early access for quite a few years. That's how that works. And that is why I don't like buying or playing early access games. It's usually not the full release and not the full experience, and I would rather wait with my money for the full release. And I'm so strict with that mindset, and I apply it so strictly that I will not touch games like, for example, Ultra Kill until that game is fully released and finished. I want the full release. Now, I can still purchase the early access version of the game to support the developers, especially if it's actually an indie game, whatever that means nowadays, but I will only play the final product almost always unless the early access actually has a sizable amount of content, such as Far Far West, for example, or Deep Rock, or the game isn't just a single player game and has a pretty sizable amount of content to grind through already. At that point, it's pretty good to play in an early access state, but some games are not really playable in an early access state. Hell, I would argue that when I started playing Warframe all the way back on release, back in the day, that game wasn't even fully at the point where I would argue it would have been worth playing actively. And kind of look at the game, look at how far it's come to this day. How long was Warframe in basically a beta state? Patience is a virtue in gaming nowadays, and a ton of players need to desperately learn patience. Being patient also means that I have a lot of time to sit there and read the discussions, read reviews, watch videos, look into the communities, and look at Steam charts before I will ever make a purchasing decision. I'm kind of done purchasing blindly. I was done with that about 10 years ago. I'm done wasting money on games in an industry where so many, an insane amount of these products have never been worth the asking price. That is why I harp on so much about the $60 price tag, like some other YouTubers do. I was completely against this price increase when it was introduced back years ago. I always thought many games, even back then, were much more realistically in the $40 price range. I will almost never, in any circumstance, pay $60 on release, and never more than that. The times I bought a $70 game, on release no less, you can probably count on a single hand, and it maybe happens maybe once a year, if even. And especially AAA games are just too risky nowadays. I don't trust the developers with that amount of money anymore, I'm sorry. Especially in the dying live service market. Even with games in the $60, $70 price range, the ones I do buy, I first look for key reseller sites to shave off like a few bucks, because I just don't think most games are worth that amount of money. And that is also why everyone has their eyes peeled and everyone's looking to the Steam charts, which is what I'm doing, because it is kind of vital information for games, especially live service games. And this is really important here. Nobody really cares if a game, let's say like Resident Evil Requiem, loses like 90% of all players in a month. That is a single player game, that's okay. But in a multiplayer and a multiplayer live service game, player numbers are kind of the be all and end all. And I don't know why people won't realize this. It's not, I get it, it's people rage baiting and it's people purposefully making fun of the games. But it's also just very aware and very averse critically minded consumers that kind of want to stake out the situation before buying a game. I know that is not what everybody usually is doing, but I know that while it is a minority, there is a number of gamers who truly and honestly purchase games like that, very carefully, very deliberately, and they try to get as much information on the game, the background, and obviously initial player counts before purchasing, because games are not cheap and it's literally kind of just a digital entertainment product, and paying that much for light digital entertainment is a big ask, even for people who have dispensable income. I'm not talking, it's not an argument from poverty. I'm gonna go to that later. Nobody acts as though every game is measured by player count. That's not, I get it, some people do that too, but those are the rage baiters. But this is more something that is very, very important for AAA multiplayer live service games. This is where player counts are really important. They have to be measured by this, because I don't want to play a game where match times, possibly player quality, match quality, connection quality, and so many more things could be negatively impacted by a low player count. There's so many avenues where a low player number can negatively impact a live service game. That is, low player numbers is a sign of apathy. That is the primary reason why these games die in the first place. So we can't just ignore player counts. Nobody wants to be the last casual in a sea of wailing sweatlords that have stuck with their dying AAA game due to like a mental illness-induced sunk cost fallacy. That is why Destiny 2 PvP, for example, kind of stopped being fun to me, because there weren't enough people there anymore. That's why back in the day I stopped playing Hawken. If you remember Hawken, that was like a mech PvP game. The player population was just too small. And that means only the most dedicated, and these are mostly a lot of the no fun allowed sweats, were left. And it wasn't fun anymore to play it. And that's why more and more people fell off. And this happened with so many games. In fact, look at Guild Wars 2 PvP. Look at the PvP community in Guild Wars 2. Look at Digital Extremes and Warframe. Why have they stopped promoting any of their PvP modes? Why is the matchmaking outside of Europe so fucked up in Battlefield 6, for example? There's all too very specifically, not just, but it's partially to low player populations. I mean, it's the primary cause of death of certain games. No players, no money, no community, no eyes on the game, loses money, lost value, wasted marketing, so much more. And then it's, that's how a game is finally shutting down then. And of course, everyone looks at the charts of a multiplayer game because it's the most generic, easy way to understand, statistically, if people care about the game or not, or if it's worth playing the game. Is the game actually playable? It doesn't really matter if it's fun or not. Is it actually playable? If the multiplayer queue is actually going to pop within 1 minute or 10 minutes, what is the quality of people that I will get matched with? Someone from my region or some Chinese dude, because the matchmaking can't find anyone in my region. I'm sorry, but live service, especially PvP multiplayer live service games, unfortunately, they don't just consist of fun. The only people ignoring it or arguing against it are just kind of compromised. Their opinion is worthless because they don't even understand the simple truth of these value propositions. I hate that argument that as a player, you just have to enjoy product and then you have to consume product, as if this is all that there is to it, as if all of this industry bullshit is not affecting you, me, actually all of us. It is though. It is affecting the entire industry in the form of massively reduced quality in video games across the board. You have to search obscure indie games nowadays to find stuff that isn't generic slop. And the ignorant people are still telling me I should just enjoy it and go with the flow. What if I don't? What if I can't? I don't enjoy what consumers have turned the industry into. Yeah, we, you and me, we the consumers, we did this. If we did not buy the slop, we would not be drowning in the slop. The players, you and me, and the industry are neatly connected. They are correlated. Or do you think developers just come up with shitty ideas and make all of the changes that we have been living through in the games market? All of these negative changes, all of that just came out of thin air? Companies just pulled that shit out of their asses? No, it's because people kept buying the more and more and more predatory microtransactions, and so on and so forth. Everything we do as consumers has a direct influence on the shit that we will keep getting served. There is no being ignorant. There is no pulling yourself out of that situation. Ignorance is part of that problem. You just wanting to be a normie, wanting to enjoy product, leads to the decline of all other products, franchises and equality. Franchises that then need to play to the tune of the AAA market that the consumers have influenced and the AAA market trends, because if they don't, none of these games, studios, companies, developers won't get funding anymore. It's a vicious cycle. Your ignorant, I just want to have fun purchasing decisions actually have an immeasurable amount of influence on the industry. How do you think that works? Nobody exists in a vacuum, especially not in a market. Your purchasing habits and decisions hold value. You can't be ignorant about it. This is how people get you. This is how you get scammed. This is how you get turned into a pay piggy. You don't even realize what quality we have lost in the last few years. All the shit that we have to put up with more and more and more just to get access to one simple video game. Who's responsible for all of this shit? It's not just the evil investors and publishers. Who do you think is responsible for this trend? Is it the people who look at games as products and value propositions and they are carefully making purchases and having a critical attitude about the market and trends? Or is it the normie consumers that screech in perpetuity, I just want to have fun, let me have fun? No, I won't let you have fun. If that fun ruins my fun, my enjoyment of video games and the sloppifying of the industry, just stop buying mid-tier trash slop and calling it the best thing ever. You fucking golem. You will be the first to shit, piss and cry when one of your precious games get taken down to it being no longer commercially viable. Why do you think that happened? I mean, of course, you didn't care. You didn't give a shit about if a product commercially is viable or not. You just wanted to have fun. Well, now that game's gone. The fun is gone. Fun is over. Studio's closed. It's dead. It's done. It's gone. Over. And what did you do to reverse this? What did you contribute to? Did you do anything to prevent this from happening besides just having fun? Do you think this shit doesn't affect you? How many people still think that Anthem should not have been shut down? How many people believe this mediocre game was secretly still salvageable if the devs just wouldn't have stopped? You just gotta believe, man. We just gotta believe in the poor developers. They can turn that ship around. Well, that's just not how reality works. The game wasn't viable and now it's gone permanently. Anthem in the way it existed is not gonna come back. We will never get an Anthem from BioWare. And all of the people who just sat there and argued, shut up, I just want to have fun with Anthem, none of these people contributed to the game not dying. And this is gonna happen to all of your favorite games if your only attitude is always just, shut up, I just want to have fun. But I heavily suspect that the people with that attitude are just literally just gonna move on to the next product, like a swarm of flies to a pile of shit. Players like this contribute nothing to anything, to no discussion, nothing. You contribute nothing. They blindly purchase the slop all the way to the end until apathy finally kills the game. You're not helping anything. You're not helping the industry improve. You are the silent, the willing, brain-dead consumer. And I'm sorry, but the silent and the blind should not lead and rule over those that speak up and urge for improvements. That is how you run everything into the ground, giving the blind and mute masses attention while ignoring those with critical voices. That is the textbook definition how to fuck everything up, or on how to not do things right in all walks of life. If you don't contribute to the improvement of the consumer experience, you only hold up your hand for the corpus to take shit in. That's not helping. That is useless consumerism. And don't act all high and mighty about it just because you are ignorant. That's one of the worst character traits. There's nothing positive about ignorance in that aspect. Do you think something like Stop Killing Games came into being because of ignorance? Do you think any of the few wins that we have, the few positive changes, do you think that came to be because people were ignorant about the state of the industry? Or do you think it came to be because people did actually care, because they didn't just want to be mindless consumers? Just think about how much shit was enabled and encouraged just because people were ignorant and stayed silent until it hurts, until it really hurts you personally. Then they start crying. But then, at that moment, it's too late. The state of the industry is a product of consumer ignorance, mindlessness and submissiveness. It's all fun and games until you wake up on a landfill of shit and garbage and you wonder, how did I get here? This is not fun anymore. Well, maybe you could have spoken up a bit sooner or maybe changed your behavior. You don't even have to speak. You don't have to contribute to the discussion in, activism terms. In order to turn that ship around, you could have changed your purchasing habits. That's one of the biggest influences that you as a consumer can have on the industry. I just can't get over the ignorance argument. I want to take a look into the brains of these people and see how empty it is up there. I really do. They just look into the mirror and there's just nothing staring back at them. It's just empty eyes. There isn't a voice in there that maybe tells them, hey, listen, the thing you're doing, consider that maybe for a moment. Was that the right decision? Man, I have that voice in my head when I buy anything that isn't just generic everyday needs. Anything that's some sort of investment. It's my money. I don't care how much money I have. I don't care how wealthy I am. I am always looking at reasonable purchasing options in any walk of life. It just should be the normal occurrence in a healthy human mind to rethink purchases. But judging by how many people purchase cars way outside of their budget range and then they get dragged over the table by the car dealership with the contracts and they're sitting there paying that car off for years. I mean, that's literally the same thing that's happening in gaming. It's just idiots being taken advantage of by people who are industry savvy, who know how to make money and who know these people know how to scam you out of your money. But I guess that is how some people get truly wealthy and others spend their monthly allowance, that little bit of money that they have, on trash mid-tier games that die within half a year. That is not a good value proposition. And of course, we all play games for fun. Yes, we all play games for fun. It's one of the primary reasons you play games. But modern games, the AAA industry, it does not offer fun. It doesn't offer a worthwhile value proposition of fun. If the state of video games, the AAA industry, was different, I wouldn't even be here saying all of that. It's precisely because we are inundated with so much slop. That is why these discussions get louder. This is why more and more people look at Steam charts and numbers and performances. This is why Steam is going to give us more things that we can look at before we make a purchasing decision. That is why you can append your own computer specs to reviews, because people want to know, because they can no longer trust the industry to provide worthwhile products. And Steam is doing a really good job, a really good pro-consumer job in enabling you to make better purchasing decisions. Steam isn't actually doing nothing. I hate that argument too, Steam doing nothing and winning. No, Steam is doing very positive things, and that is why they are winning. Honestly, looking at Steam charts and reviews before buying a game, it should just be a normal thing to do. A everyday occurrence. I'm sorry, but I'm not wasting $70 on trash, especially if you only have that 2-hour window to finalize that decision. I'm sorry, but no thanks. The industry truly thinks we are stupid like that. I'm convinced. Just look at how much gamers are despised by some of the developers in these studios. That should tell you everything you need to know. These people hate their own customer base. They despise us, especially if we got a brain. I do wonder if these people are truly in the right place in terms of profession. They're probably not in the right place of mind, in the right state of mind, but maybe also choosing a different career path in life would have done them some good instead of going into an industry where they hate their own consumers. Charts are not an indicator of quality. Yes, correct. Everyone with a brain understands that, but it is not why people are looking at Steam charts. Come on, we're getting into 1 + 1 is 2 here. This is about AAA multiplayer live service games. I don't know how many times I need to say this. That is when a chart becomes truly important. Independent of the quality of the game, by the way. You can make the most competent game to date, but if it is a live service game and it doesn't sustain a player count that keeps the game afloat, financially speaking, depending on the development studio and the size and the publishers behind it, development costs and return of investment, yada yada yada, then even the best game ever, like literally, not just because Asmongold calls it that, literally the objectively best game ever, whatever that means nowadays, is not going to survive because it is not sustainable on that amount of players. And you can ignore that fact and you can have your little fun adventure in your dying video game, but that behavior means that the next time the same thing is going to happen again. Because just as the consumers aren't learning anything, the developers are also not learning anything, because apparently people just keep buying their games. And every consumer is gonna fork over their money again. They're gonna have some fun again until the next game dies. Notice anything yet? There is no improvement to the overall situation. The games still keep dying, quality keeps sinking, studios get closed, developers fired, studios downsized. Do you think that this ongoing downwards trend of the industry is going to lead to improvements of the current status of the industry? And do you think your ignorant behavior is counteracting or enabling the decline of the industry? The I don't care argument is simply not valid. Simple as. That stance is not what the industry needs now. We don't need fence sitting, we don't need blind trust, we don't need consumer cults, and we don't need corporate shills. We need changes. decisions. Years ago, by the way. This ship needs to be turned around now, not later. And you having fun is doing more harm than you might think. Only money talks. Your fun is irrelevant in the equation of money. And the only thing you are showing these corporations is that they can do it to you over and over and over again. They scam you out of 60 bucks. They give you the minimum viable product, minimum viable fun product, quote unquote. Then they kill the product and they move on to the next product, just as you move on and purchase the next product, and you get excited for the next product, and you will keep buying the next product. And that is why it keeps happening. Yeah, man, idiots like that are truly one of the main reasons it's going downhill in the games industry nowadays. And sadly, the only thing you can do if you're one of the minority is to make better purchasing decisions for yourself. Calling these people out is not going to do anything. You're talking to NPCs. You are talking to NPC-brained people. You might as well talk to a bot. The gaming market, especially the AAA market, is slowly developing to a point where smart people don't want to spend money on a possible flop, since there is no way to get your money back after the mythical 2-hour window. And even players that have dispensable income will start second-guessing themselves if they got burnt multiple times. Or at least I hope so. It's not like this is a poor man's argument. Again, don't misunderstand me. It is not a simple I don't have money issue. It's a cost to value issue. Both of these are always coinciding with each other. It's never just money. It's money to value. It's the simple question of, will this game be fun in relation to the money? But you can't ignore the money. Will I spend money on this game, and then are my friends willing to play this with me? How long will my friends play with me? Will I end up being the lonely loser that still plays that one game while all of my friends have moved on? And again, how is the overall player population? And this is why many developers want this number to be hidden. It is an excellent indicator for or against a purchasing decision. And now let's just talk facts. If you make a niche game for a niche audience, you can indeed live off a low player population, like many games with small teams can and do. If 500 daily players is more than enough for your studio, that is when the argument of I don't give a shit about player counts might hold a sliver of value, but not if a multi-billion investor and publisher stands behind the product and expects yearly earning calls, revenue growth, and 100 other imposed goals that a studio is supposed to follow. That argument of ignorance falls short then and there. And here's the thing, I don't envy these people at all anymore. They walk through life with that no care attitude, don't give a shit attitude. They are the prime example of the poor dudes that get scammed and taken advantage of on a daily basis. The prime normie zombie consumer. They are enjoying soulless product, buying product, getting excited for next product, continuing to consume product like a good little golem. I don't even feel sad for these people anymore because I've just gotten past that feeling. I've gotten past the feeling of sorry because these people are incredibly obnoxious. Just let these people get bled dry for all of the values and money. They're just completely gone off the rails. I can't help them anymore. I'm just going to value my money and watch the player counts. And let's be honest, I probably won't be purchasing any other live service game anyway. I'm kind of over the battle royale, extraction, looter, shooter, live service, MMO slop trend. I'm done with that shit. Give me a good single player game, 40 bucks, take it or leave it. Give me something like Deep Rock, you know? A game that kind of gets a few updates every now and then, little DLCs maybe. These like in-between indie games, like indie to soft AA games. Kind of just without the disgusting AAA stink baggage attached. I'm so done with like that normie consumer market, the trash shovelware. I'm over it. At this point, it's just literally whale watching, or I guess train wreck watching, a train wreck in slow motion. And that is also why people look at Steam charts nowadays. It's like a sizable chunk of these guys flaunting Steam numbers. They'll never buy the trash because they know it's trash. You don't even have to play these games to know that it is trash. They have zero interest in yet another AAA slop realism, artsy-fartsy, stolen art, mediocre color vomit experience. But they're here to watch the burning house. What, call the fire department? Nah, we're way past that. We are way past that. Too many people have screamed at us, stop calling the fire department, how dare you? How dare you sound the alarm? The house isn't burning down. This is fine. It's just a little bit warm. Also, who would the fire department be in the AAA industry? Who would it be? Who would put out the fucking inferno? Who would be the surgeon that's getting rid of the tumor of the triple industry rot? Who is that studio that finally gets us off the Unreal Engine 5 slop train and the realism trend? I don't think any studio is going to do that, and the consumers aren't going to do that. I think this might be just up to us, you know, the minority, the few people who are making healthy purchasing decisions decisions. I still worry, critical minds are in a very small minority still in the games industry, and we still have blind consumerism, especially that ignorant attitude. That is why shit-stained AAA companies are still capable of selling us mediocre trash to this very day. And until that changes, yeah, the only thing you can do is just make better decisions for yourself. The only person you can improve in this situation is yourself. You don't need to purchase product now. You never need to pay $70 for product. You never need to pre-purchase product. And no, you don't need extra product features. And no, you don't need extra product features for extra price. And no, you don't need early access to the product for an extra price. Are you like a game reviewer or something? If you're not a game reviewer, why are you buying 3-day early access for an additional price? Do you really feel like it is your calling to be an unpaid QA tester? See, this is why I'm so convinced that these development studios, they know, like the industry knows we are idiots. Otherwise, we wouldn't have these shitty things like pre-purchasing and early access garbage. They just know they can get brain-rotted people to pre-purchase and weak-minded to give them some extra money to be like a 3-day early access beta tester before the buggy mess actually releases. And then they can throw in like the day 1 patch after they got the 3 days of feedback from people who paid the studio to give them feedback. Isn't that crazy? This industry runs on fucking Muppets. I swear to God. It's crazy if you really think about it, if you truly put your mind to how ridiculous and pathetic the games industry is. And the consumers are the most pathetic ones. The most pathetic out of the bunch because they are all funding this crap. And it's not gonna stop. Child watching is fun and all, and pointing and laughing at a trash fire is fine. Everything is, it's a fine evening activity, but that's also not really going to change the industry. That is only going to happen if we as consumers change our spending habits. And I don't really see that happening anytime soon. For now, let's at least hope the Stop Killing Games movement actually goes somewhere. We have to take small victories. If it pisses off the games industry, the small victories become so much sweeter. But other than that, keep watching the charts, make smart purchasing decisions, and make fun of the idiots that don't get it. Ridicule really is one of the best methods. Just bring back shame. Like, some people should be ashamed for the shit that they consume and buy. But as I already stated in the past, if you're in a cult, and these people are absolutely in the cult, not even shame won't change your opinion. These people are fully, mentally, absolutely, personally immersed in their delusions and brainwashed into their beliefs. And the only thing you can do is kind of make fun of them, but it won't do much. Same goes for talking to them. I used to think I can get some of these brainlets on our side, but that won't work either. It's kind of simple psychology. You might as well, again, talk to a wall. A brick wall is more intelligent than a zombie consumer. See, and that's the point. Why waste time and effort? Leave these people to their beloved products and make fun of them. At least holding up a graph and pointing at it seems to make them mad, and that's kind of all the impact that you will have on their NPC brains before they go back to worshipping their corporate overlords. See you next time.